This is the Energizing India Podcast.
Welcome to the Energizing India Podcast. Today we are discussing one of the least understood but most critical parts of the energy transition sector in India, the power distribution grid. Whilst solar, wind, EVs, batteries and hydrogen steal all the daily headlines about our sector, the real test on whether India can deliver reliable, affordable and high-quality power to consumers every hour of every day continuously is the subject matter of our conversation today. To explore this, we are delighted to welcome Alok Kumar IAS, one of the leading voices and most experienced persons in the distribution grid sector of India. He's also chairperson of the All India Discoms Association, known as AIDA. We will discuss resource adequacy, discom reform, grid constraints, the impact of EVs, hydrogen, battery storage, power quality, and what India's power grid must look like in 2030 in order for the energy transition to be successful. Alok Kumar, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much.
You were previously Principal Secretary of Uttar Pradesh, then became Additional Chief Secretary of the state. Later, you moved to the central government's Ministry of Power as the Secretary for the Ministry of Power. And today, you're Director General of the All India Discoms Association. Thank you so much for making the time. How was that journey for you, running from Principal Secretary through to Secretary of the Ministry of Power for the central government?
It has been a wonderful journey. I will say journey started in 2003 when I was posted as Director in the Ministry of Power, dealing with the reforms and restructuring, and then moving on to the Central Electricity Regulatory Commission as Secretary, and thereafter heading these responsibilities in UP. So this has given me a very, very valuable insight and hands-on experience in the whole power sector, starting from a, utility distribution transformer to substation to the national policies, state policies, and also the process of regulation. And so this has been a wonderful journey for me, and it is still continuing.
You were the founder of the All India Discoms Association. I'm interested, what was the need for AIDA?
I'll say I joined AIDA as Director General in April 2025. The founders of AIDA were 7 utilities of India. They were a combination of government-owned utilities and private sector utilities. The objectives and the thinking behind setting up AIDA is to create a platform where utilities can come together and they can collaborate, they can innovate, they can share experiences, and more importantly, they can put forward their one reasoned voice before the policymakers and the regulators, that how the proposals or the present policies are impacting utilities in providing a reliable and affordable service to the electricity consumers. That is the rationale behind this.
Excellent. So let's talk about that a little bit more. When people think of the energy transition, they usually think of solar parks, wind farms, electric vehicles, battery storage, hydrogen. But you have often spoken about resource adequacy. And I'm interested in simple terms for our audience. What does resource adequacy actually mean, and why it has become so central to India's power distribution grid?
Very right. First part, what is resource adequacy? It means that the power system of a distribution company of a state or a country, it has adequate resources at all the time to meet the demand reliably and in an affordable manner, but at the same time a least cost outcome. So why it has become important? Few years ago, we were in the era of shortages. So whatever resources we had, we were using them. And when we were short of resources, the demand was shut. And so now India has moved ahead and we don't have shortages. But there are three things have emerged in the sector. First is the distribution companies uh, all over the world are facing larger demand uncertainties in view of the weather changes because of the climate change, global warming, and also the uncertainty in the pickup of the new electrification usage like electric mobility or electric cooking. And other factor is the distribution companies are now facing a larger share of the variable and intermittent generation. So your demand is not certain, your generation is not certain, and you are now being called upon to comply with the reliability standards. So if you see these three things together, so the resource adequacy is a necessary imperative. That means system has the capacity to meet the demand reliably and in affordable manner at all time. So earlier you had only one figure in your mind, the peak demand in a year. But now it may not be peak demand, but at the same time, your generation may not be there because of the variability of solar and wind or outages, and you may be still required to meet the reliability. You don't have the freedom to shed the load. So in this context, the resource adequacy is very, very essential for the load serving entities.
So you talked about chronic power shortage, and I come from a generation where we used to have load shedding. Different cities didn't work on different days because power was allocated to other cities. And yet India has moved, as you so correctly said, from that demand management and load shedding to actually now hitting peak power and managing peak power, peak demand, peak generation. How should we understand this from a layperson's perspective? And are our planning bodies actually planning for what's to come, given the immense amount of demand that will come on the grid with electrification of everything, from industrial demand through to mobility?
Actually, the whole ecosystem has geared up to ensure that this happens. The Ministry of Power has incorporated resource adequacy obligation in the statutory rules. The Central Electricity Authority has come out with detailed guidelines, and the Forum of Regulators, which is the collection of all the state regulatory commissions and is steered by the CRC chairman, they have come out with the model regulations. The Central Electricity Authority has also provided the stellar model, which is a very advanced resource adequacy model to all the distribution companies in the country. And this is going to be a central piece of the whole power sector in India. And the new draft electricity policy has a full chapter on resource adequacy. So all the stakeholders, all the important people, they are very much conscious, and it is all geared up. And I'm very sure that the efforts which are being put into will result in definite improvement in reliability of power supply in India, and also a least cost solution in this era of uncertainty and larger share of variable generation resources.
So it's fair to say that India's energy transition success will ultimately be won or lost at the Discom level. Everybody is, well, let's put it this way. EVs, hydrogen, solar, batteries, they steal all of the headlines. But actually the issue for the success of this sector will be about the grid's capability to support this transition. In your opinion, what does a high-performing, successful Indian Discom look like in 2030?
I will say a Discom should be able to use the data it has, number one, for various applications. Number two, it should have robust governance, because the present crisis in the distribution companies in India is the governance in the state government-owned Discoms. Third thing should be that it should be able to convince its case and present its case to regulator to have a cost-reflective tariff. And fourth thing I'll say, it should have a necessary skill sets to handle the new technologies, to handle new situations, to handle new analytics models. So once I'll say, ideal Discom in my view will be which has all these four elements.
Is there evidence to show that privatization of a Discom actually makes it more efficient and achieves all of the objectives that you have listed out? Or do you see it being agnostic?
I'll put it like this. Generally, the private sector Discoms have demonstrated higher efficiency, lower losses, and more advancement in adoption of new technologies. Example of Tata Power Company in Delhi or Mumbai, even in Odisha, the two Reliance companies in Delhi, or even the CSC in Greater Noida and Calcutta. But I'll say there are a number of convincing cases, even in state government entities, where they have been able to have lower losses and a good management and good financial health. To name few, like Gujarat, and I'll say now even Bihar and Assam have done very well in some last year. What matters is the governance, that is the leadership, that is the continuity of the managing director in the discom, and the leadership vision of the state political executive. Wherever they have been turned around in the distribution segment of the state, which has government-owned companies, two things have mattered most: the continuity of the leadership at the utility and the support of the political executive consistently. And I'll say also a profit consciousness is important. Like Gujarat, whenever you talk to the Gujarat people in the distribution companies, they say, I will never allow a rebate to be missed. I'll pay in advance and get a rebate. So that type of profit consciousness is prevalent even in government-owned companies. But generally, the private sector companies have shown better efficiency.
So staying on Gujarat, having lived and worked in Gujarat, the Gujarat State Electricity Board was always very efficient. Even 20 or 30 years ago. Is the reality of demand for electricity being largely required for the agricultural sector part of the reason of a lack of political will sometimes in ensuring a profit mentality in the discom?
One can say yes. Generally, the if you have large percentage of agricultural demand, the difficulty in enforcing discipline will be bigger. But it is not so. Like Bihar also has a lot of difficulties, poor population, some agriculture, but they are able to do. I'll still say the governance and the political leadership willpower is important. As far as Gujarat is concerned, Gujarat also had a lot of theft of power. But our honorable Prime Minister, who was then the Chief Minister, he dealt with these cases with iron hand. So it is not a given thing. So I will say that.
So let's talk about theft, because theft is one of those pink elephants in the room in the Indian power sector, and it's been around since independence. What is it that cannot be addressed? You've talked about the then Chief Minister, now Prime Minister, having addressed it in Gujarat, but why is it so endemic across the system in India?
I'll say theft in a large cases is because of connivance with the utility employees also. So it is both. There are some poor households who steal electricity through hooking, but in equal measure, theft is done by industrial and commercial consumers also. So theft is a quite a general thing which is seen in India. But if you want to make your state progress and develop, then provision of electricity in a reliable and cost competitive manner is a must. So I will say many chief ministers have seen this long-term benefit of having a healthy and financially doing well distribution company. And that is the way, that is the reason why in the recent years, in Assam and Bihar, they have been leaders in smart metering and they have turned around. So it is, I'll say, basically the determination and vision of the political leadership and the utility processes which are important.
So at the AIDA level, where you're a number of grids that are working together, do you have an objective for say 2030 or 2040 that says we will eliminate theft, and so you have some sort of policy document on how that can be achieved that you lobby with government?
I will say the AIDA believes in the national objectives. Currently, the RDSS scheme, which is revamped distribution sector scheme, it has set a target of the aggregate technical commercial losses to be between the band of 12 to 15%. It has already touched 15%. And going forward, the objective is to take it to single digit figure. So AIDA also believes, and we are working for that by 2030, the aggregate technical commercial losses should be less than 10%. And that will be possible through both reducing the leakages through improving the billing efficiency, which also controls theft, and also by reducing your technical losses. That means you have to invest in the network upgrade. And let me say one thing, which is the technology is the biggest enabler to control theft, because when your whole system is metered, not only consumer but also distribution transformer, your feeders and all, and you have a very robust energy accounting, you can pinpoint theft and the concerned employee. So I'm very sure both the national efforts and infusion of new technologies, our operational efficiency will be much higher at a single digit level.
You talked about technical losses in the grid. For our audience who are not deeply technical, how do you explain what causes these technical losses on the grid?
It is a law of physics. Like when a current flows through a conductor, because of its resistance, certain energy is lost, which is I square R. So it's a phenomena of physics. So you have to maintain and develop your transmission and distribution system in a way that your technical losses remain within the global best benchmarks, which are around, I'll say, in a compact urban area, they will be less than 4%. In a mixed urban-rural area, they may be 6-7%. But to make it abundantly clear, technical losses is one which is not commercial. That means it is because of the technical nature of the electricity. These losses happen in the system. And if you don't have proper ratio of the low tension and high tension wires in your system, losses will be higher, because at low tension level, your voltage is low and current is high. And I say losses are square of the current flowing. So you have to maintain a healthy LT-ST ratio, maintain your asset well, so you can control your technical losses.
So we're a company that makes EV chargers, and we've got thousands of EV chargers now installed across India, and we track them at our network operations center every 60 seconds. The average on every day, about 10 to 11% of the entire network is out of service because of no power availability. Admittedly, in the rural areas, it's much more than in the urban areas. So the further away you go from a big city, that happens. And so the learning we have is, and you've touched on both, the two issues that any consumer of power in India has is one, availability or reliability of the power, as you talked about. And the second one is quality of the power. So even the EV charger needs to have spike busters, voltage stabilizers. It needs to have a UPS backup, because the quality of power is poor as well. Yet when we speak to people such as yourselves, there's such clarity about what needs to be done. From your perspective, since you've looked at it over many years, what are the biggest challenges in addressing these two in India, which is the reliability and the quality of power?
I'll say the policy focus over the last few decades has been the expansion of grid to provide access to all to electricity. India accomplished that task in 2019. Now the focus has shifted to reliability, and reliability requires two tasks. First is to measure and publish. So unless until you measure it and monitor it, you will not improve it. So now there is a lot of emphasis on the reliability indices to be monitored and published. Our REC, the Government of India, NVFC, now it comes out with an annual report on consumer service ratings, and which says that as the reliability parameters are published state-wise. Second thing is the reliability requires the system to have sufficient redundancy, because if there is some wire is broken and then some outage, then we should be able to supply power through some other route. So the there has to be ring main systems, more bifurcation of feeders. So the new scheme, RDSS scheme of Government of India, it is providing significant funds to distribution companies for upgrading the system. But the fact remains that to make it sustainable, the financial health of the distribution companies has to improve so that they do it in a regular business process. They should not depend on the government grants for this. So that is a major task which is underway. Losses have come down. The gap between the costs and revenue realized have narrowed. So I'm very sure that if India's policy makers and regulators, they persist with the current focus, things should change very significantly in next 4 to 5 years.
So let's look at the future then, because India has a very exciting future. The Prime Minister talks of Viksit Bharat. I'll focus on 2030, when we should see a big change in the demand and also the energy mix, which we'll talk about. By 2030, there's going to be big growths in EVs, battery energy storage systems, hydrogen generation, rooftop solar, as well as industrial electrification, because we're trying to move away from polluting, heat and energy sources. Which of these do you imagine will create the biggest challenge for the grid in India, and which could become the biggest opportunity if it's managed well?
I'll say three things will have the largest impact on the utilities in India. First is the penetration of the DREs, rooftop. Because if you increase penetration of rooftop without battery storage at the local level, the management of that surplus solar energy will create a lot of problems for utilities. So that is the one change which is now being discussed about. Second challenge I feel utilities will face about the increasing demand from space cooling requirements. Because India is a tropical country, and because of the higher temperatures and such conditions, the experience has been the non-solar demand is increasing at much higher rate because of the space cooling requirements. So our systems have to cater to that peak demand and also try to shift that demand to solar hours through time of day tariffs and smart metering. Third challenge I'll say is the electric mobility. Electric mobility has just picked up, and our national projections are that it will go to much higher levels. And if you don't manage the charging at the right time in the system, it will put more pressure to your electrical systems. So these three things in my mind will be the most challenging thing to address by the utilities: the rooftop without storage, the electric mobility, and the space cooling load.
So there's rooftop that likely will move to some sort of battery energy storage support. There's space cooling, which means that we need a focus on far more efficient air conditioners
systems, and also shifting the demand, some of demand to, like in commercial establishments, you have chillers which you can use them in the, say, solar hours. You can store the thermal energy, and you can do the cooling down in the non-solar. So there are many things. So you need both the technology and also the right price signals to the consumers.
True. Talking about price signals, do you think that is how EV charging demand is to be managed in India? Because there is the private charging, which can happen at night, yes, but then you have public charging, which is the buses, right, and the trucks, which will be running in the daytime, large depots that will require peak time.
I will say any load, be it electric mobility or any other industrial demand, you can shift it to solar hours only to some extent, because there are both behavioral aspects involved, consumer behavior, and also the process requirement. If the industry is a continuous process, it will consume energy. It will not disrupt this process. So we need a good combination to do a better planning. What can be shifted, what cannot be shifted. What cannot be shifted, you have to plan for that, upgrade your network, procure power accordingly, give price signal. And whatever can be shifted we should take, say, adequate regulatory incentive and disincentive to shift the demand. Coming to electric vehicle charging, the only time of day tariffs will not be adequate, because you will have to have some tweak in the system level operations, smart charging. Like if the system is in stress for some time, the load which a charging station can take has to be modulated for some time. So it has to be a combination of some tariff induced changes and some system induced changes. That's what the smart charging concept is coming in.
So is that the grid talking to the charging depot, or is that just the grid deciding to cut off demand from the charging depot?
Yeah, it's a grid actuated. Say certain things are automatic changes, certain things are the optional behavioral changes. So it is the understanding when you connect a load, like for data center, when you connect, then you tell them that, okay, I will give you power with this reliability. And you also, as a data center, cannot change your load very abruptly. Similarly, the charging station, when I connect, I will have understanding with them as a contractual that these are the things you will have to comply with to support the grid. Otherwise, the network upgrade cost and the consequent system cost will be too high to be borne by the electric vehicles. So it has to be done very smartly, this whole thing.
So when we talk about a grid level demand and storage management, green hydrogen can be used, of course, for energy. It can be used for heat. It can be used for mobility, but it's also a great source of energy storage. Has there been any conversation or conceptualization of looking at whether green hydrogen can be used for massive grid-scale energy storage?
Green hydrogen is a new concept in India. So initially, developers are focused only on setting up some renewable energy, say, generating facilities, their electrolyzers, and they were demanding banking of power to the grid, which we explained that it is not possible beyond a certain extent. So now there is a more, say, awareness and consciousness that green hydrogen producers have to set up some limited storage both of electricity and hydrogen in their systems. So some storage of electricity so that they can manage with that battery storage to run their facilities for production of hydrogen in the non-solar hours. Similarly, some green hydrogen can be stored also, but green hydrogen, storing hydrogen is very expensive, storing and transporting. So as the technology develops further, I'm very sure the green hydrogen storage will become an economic option. But currently, green hydrogen can be stored for use as a hydrogen, but the storing hydrogen for supporting the generation in, say, for seasonal variations is still very expensive. Very, very expensive. I think it is still on the as a concept stage and being discussed only.
So then, leaving hydrogen aside, do you at the grid level, is there a view whether energy storage should be at massive grid level, at the generation level, or at the use point level, or a mix of all of them?
I say it is required at all levels. It has its own usage. If you co-locate with generation, you optimize your transmission costs. And if you co-locate with transmission, you can overcome congestions. If you co-locate with distribution network, you can absorb the distribution renewable energy more efficiently, more optimally. And even the location within the consumer premises behind the meter is also very important to manage your rooftop solar and all. So where should we do it? It should be an outcome of your resource adequacy modeling exercise. Because once you provide all options to the model will tell you what combination of storage is the least cost solution. But intuitively, it is required at all the 4 locations.
That's really wonderfully put. Is there a policy that the government is coming out with, or AIDA is coming out with, to actually create a mix of all of these?
No, that is where we started today in the conversation. The resource adequacy is not only for generation adequacy. Resource adequacy means the adequacy of taking the all possible options: generation, transmission, storage, and demand response. So you have all the 4 options to meet a projected demand and demand pattern, and then you come out with a solution. And that is the mandate today in the government policy, that you do a resource adequacy model which co-optimizes generation, transmission, storage all together.
Excellent. Last 2 questions then. And the first of these is a generation question, not a distribution question, but I'll still put it to you. In India's energy mix, Whilst the installed capacity is looking very healthy, the generation capacity is still overwhelmingly coal. And that's not a bad thing. The reality is it is the best and cheapest source of energy in India at the moment. How do you see the energy mix changing in the next 5 or 10 years?
Two things are certain. The solar capacities will continue to dominate and lead because of their being available in almost all states, and its technology costs are coming down. Wind will be second to follow, and third, the share of the coal-based generation will come down. But since our energy demands are all in totality are increasing, so we will have more coal-based generation, but its share will come down. And last thing I'll say is the share of storage in the total mix, both the battery storage and pumped storage projects, is going to go up very sharply. So that is one. And we will also try to increase the share of nuclear and hydropower stations. But my assessment is that nuclear and hydro will grow at its own pace, maybe somewhat better. But the leading part will be the solar, wind, the storage in the next 10 years.
Last question then. From your perspective, what do you reckon are the 3 or 4 critical reforms that are needed in India's power distribution sector between now and 2030? And what does success for a consumer look like at the end of those reforms?
I'll say first is we have started doing resource adequacy. It needs to be further refined and it has to be enforced because all the load serving entities need to have full resource contracted. So that is one important thing because that brings the surety of a reliable supply. Second is the growth of the markets. So if we need to have more efficient dispatches, so capacity in the system, but how you dispatch that capacity should be driven more by the price signals which are created by markets. That is second reform, because that will bring the dispatch efficiency for the whole system. Third will be the cross subsidy elimination, because most of the reforms in India, they get stuck because of the cross subsidies, be it open access, be it P2P trading, whatever it is. So cross subsidy reduction has been a little slower. I will wish that it goes faster and we don't have any significant cross subsidies by 2030. And fourth will be a data-driven governance, which will not only assist the utilities in making better use of their data for planning and procurement, but will also improve governance, because when you have data in public domain, then you are questioned and you be prepared to improve. These 4 reforms are important for India.
What a wonderful conversation this has been. Alok Kumar, thank you for making the
so
time
much.
to be
Thank
on
you
the
for
show.
hosting me. Thank you.
It's clear that India's energy priorities have changed over the last 30 years. India's energy mix is going to change over the next 5 years. And it's going to be very interesting to see how India and the grid supports the massive growth that the economy is going to be demanding in the next few years.
Absolutely. These are great times, very interesting times. So it is very exciting to work in power sector in the such changing times.
Alok Kumar, thank you for making the time to be on this program. My big takeaway is that India's energy transition success will be won not at the power generation plant, but in fact at the heart of the power distribution grid. Thank you so much for making the time. We hope to see you on the program one more time.
Yeah, thank you so much.